But if I was really going to try and summarise some of the thinking around perfectionism, is that it really robs us of the opportunity and the chance to move forward and ultimately then to live a meaningful life. Imagine you've never entered a race because you just don't ever feel ready for it, or you've quit halfway through a tough training block because it wasn't going perfectly. This isn't what I thought it was going to be. You're denying yourself the chance to grow, and you're also denying the people around you, your crew, your running friends, your community, the chance to see the real human side of yourself. Welcome back to the Pyllon Ultra Pod, where we dive deep into the lessons, the challenges and the mindsets that shape us, not just as runners but as people. It's been a really busy few months for me. I was away early September crewing at the Tor, and then that week, the same week we came back from the Tor, which was epic. We had an XP event in Glenshee, which was also pretty epic. And after that, there's just been loads of ups and downs and things to get done. So that's why I've been a bit quiet with the podcast. But I'm back into a routine at the moment, back into a good routine with my training. And I'm training for a race early next year. So it's all go, trying to get back into a groove with all that. The Pyllon business itself is 10 years old. And this weekend, we're having a bit of a run celebration party. You're more than welcome to join us. If you haven't already, put your name down. If you want to know more about it, just check out the blog that's on the Pyllon website. We also have some birthday patches and stickers that look like that, which we've sent out to our athletes. But if you want one because you listen to the podcast, or you follow some stuff on socials, or you know me, or you know somebody connected to Pyllon and you want one that you can stick on your pack or on a t-shirt or a hat, please just leave a review on the podcast if you're listening to the audio podcast, or you can comment below if you're watching this on YouTube, and I'll try my best to get one out to you whilst we still have some left. Today I'm really keen to tackle something that's been on my mind lately quite a lot, and that's this idea or concept around perfectionism. And it's really that voice in your head that says if it's not flawless, then it's not worth it. The same voice that tells you to keep on tweaking something, keep on trying, keep on changing, or to keep waiting for the perfect moment to happen for you to actually go and do something, or you're holding back because you're ultimately scared of making mistakes along the way. And here's the thing, that voice, it's lying to you. And in ultra running and in life, the mistakes and the mess ups and the messy stuff is inevitable. And it's more than just being inevitable, it's essential for you to grow as a human and to grow as an athlete. It's baked into the process. I think the idea and the concept around perfectionism has been covered in countless books. Some of them I've read, some of them probably still sitting at the side of my bed, unread. But if I was really going to try and summarise some of the thinking around perfectionism, is that it really robs us of the opportunity and the chance to move forward and ultimately then to live a meaningful life. And honestly, if you've ever taken on an ultra or a long race or anything like that, you've probably felt that firsthand. The problem for me personally, and I think it's probably the same for a lot of people, is I found accepting that there is a level of perfectionism there quite difficult. So if, for example, somebody said to me, you're a perfectionist when it comes to some of that stuff, Paul, what you do, you're aiming for perfection there, I'd automatically say, no, I don't. I mean, have you seen these videos? Have you listened to the podcast? Have you seen the mistakes that I maybe make in emails? Or some of the stuff that I maybe mess up when I'm trying to present an idea? So I would discount somebody saying to me that you're a perfectionist. But it's like, I would probably say perfectionism is for people that are doing absolutely incredible stuff. You know, you'd probably say some top Olympians or something, they're probably perfectionists because they're at the absolute highest level. But actually, the attitude is very much present in me, and it's probably present in a lot of you that are listening at the moment. So if we can start maybe unpacking what perfectionism really is, it's not just about setting high standards. Research shows that it's often driven by fear, either fear of failure or fear of not being enough. Brené Brown, her work on vulnerability, calls perfectionism a shield, ultimately. And it's what we use to protect ourselves from the discomfort of being seen as anything less than perfect. But here's the kicker. That shield, it's really, really heavy to carry all the time. It slows you down. It stops you from taking any kind of risks. And it stops you from learning and from growing too. The author, Oliver Burkeman, who I've spoken about a few times on this podcast, he argues that perfectionism is really all about control. We cling to it because we believe that we can eliminate uncertainty altogether. We can avoid making mistakes and we can make everything just right. But the truth is, life is messy. Running's messy. Training for an ultra is messy. And trying to control everything only leaves us stuck, and we become paralysed by overthinking sometimes. Now let's bring it into our world, specifically the world of ultra running. If you've ever trained for a race, you know how tempting it is to chase perfection and to try constantly to practice for this race that's coming up. You're looking for the perfect training plan. You're looking for the perfect gear to wear in training and in racing. You're hoping for perfect race conditions, and you convince yourself that if you nail all the variables, everything's going to go smoothly. But the reality is, there's nothing smooth about completing an ultra in most cases. Now, I've seen it in my own running journey. There was a time where I let perfectionism hold me back, and I'm still uncomfortable even saying that I feel like I was a perfectionist, because I've never felt like what I do is good enough anyway, so how could I possibly be a perfectionist? But when I look back, I was probably obsessing about training plans and changing things and trying all the latest workouts, or anything I read somewhere online, or I saw somebody else doing a particular kind of workout. I probably did a lot of that. So I was always trying to find the perfect combination of workouts. I'd probably get fixated on small mistakes or weeks where I didn't quite feel as strong. Maybe I didn't quite deliver to my early intentions in the week of what I was going to get done from a training perspective. I maybe miss a session, or my long run would be much slower and much more difficult than I expected it to be. And I'd beat myself up about that kind of stuff. I actually remember one big week of training in Chamonix when I was living there, and I was obviously coming up, I think, probably to a UTMB race, but I'd set myself some huge ascent target for the week, or maybe not so huge, I don't know. But I remember going back out again on a Sunday night because I was 300 or 400 metres short of like a 25,000 metre ascent target for the week, right? And like looking back now, I can clearly say that I was probably better just taking that extra bit of rest and going, that was a really good week. You hit 24,000 and whatever it was, 400 metres or 600 metres. It's pretty impressive, Paul. But I pushed myself to go back out again, so I'm going out at 9 p.m. to go and climb up a hill just to get another few hundred metres. So things like that, I can look back and think maybe perfectionism was causing me some issues. And then the more ultras I ran, I realised that the perfect race itself, it just doesn't exist. There's always going to be unexpected challenges. There's always going to be some kind of mistake you're going to make. You're going to miss a turn and go past there. Inevitably, at some point in your running journey, you're going to have stomach problems, or the weather's going to turn your whole plan upside down, like in an instant. And the key isn't really to try and avoid those moments. It's actually just learning to adapt and to keep moving and to embrace the messiness of it all. And I try to encourage all my athletes to do that, and especially in winter, it's actually quite a good time of year to do it, because conditions can dictate how effective your training is for that week, for example. And we've seen that recently with some snowfall and some ice and stuff like that. So actually trying to encourage your athletes to take a step back sometimes and not to punish themselves if they couldn't go and do that interval session, because it didn't make sense. I was going to fall over, I was going to slip on some ice and set my training journey back by weeks. So it's quite a useful time of year for that kind of thing. There's also some kind of paradox, I think, to perfection, that by accepting our limitations and our imperfections, we actually free ourselves to actually get things done. And we've seen this before, talked about it before on the podcast, but people with this growth mindset, they see the mistakes as opportunities to learn and not not to rack up this evidence of failure. And isn't that what ultra running's all about, really? Every misstep on a trail teaches you something about the course, about your body, about your limits, and about your resilience. There's a concept in Japanese culture called wabi-sabi, I think that's how you pronounce it, and it celebrates imperfection and impermanence, and it's the idea that there's beauty in things that are flawed and unfinished. And imagine bringing that mindset into your running journey. What if instead of seeing mistakes as problems, you saw them as part of the art that you're creating? And I don't know, like I sometimes think that running could have a strong connection to creativity. I think my journey has made me feel that way. And could you turn it around a little bit if you considered what you do as partly something to do with your own art, rather than just being an activity I do, and it's a measurable activity that you've done well or you've failed, and it's very black and white that way. So how can we let go of perfectionism, especially as runners? How do we stop getting stuck in the loop of overthinking, overplanning, and never quite feeling ready? For me, one of the most powerful ideas I've come across comes from a different field altogether, right? So it's an author, Seth Godin, who you may or may not have heard of. It's a guy who's a bit of a marketing guru, so that's when I first was made aware of him. But he writes now a lot about connection and building community and all those kind of things, and how successful companies actually connect with their audiences and stuff. But he talks about the importance of shipping your work, right? So it's putting your work out into the world, and that could be something creative, or it could be just about you being prepared to put yourself out there in the world, this flawed individual, or this work that just isn't perfect. And if you don't ship it, you don't move on. You don't really learn anything, you just stay stuck. You refine things as much as you can, you tweak endlessly, but you don't actually make any progress until you ship it. And I really like this idea. It goes back to some of the stuff I was talking about earlier, that when you're stuck because you're fearful of judgment, or you don't want to make mistakes, you're not actually moving forward. Like, how many people do we know that have had great ideas? I was going to do that at one point, or I don't know, like musicians who great in their bedroom, but they don't actually put the work out there. So they don't really progress, they don't really move on. So in running, I think it's the same thing. Imagine you've never entered a race because you just don't ever feel ready for it, or you've quit halfway through a tough training block because it wasn't going perfectly. This isn't what I thought it was going to be. You're denying yourself the chance to grow. And you're also denying the people around you, your crew, your running friends, your community, the chance to see the real human side of yourself, the side that struggles and the side that fails and it keeps going anyway. And those are the stories that we actually really connect with in the end, but we can't seem to see it for ourselves. So I think putting out imperfection shouldn't always be wrong. Yes, I think you absolutely have to make the best of what you have, do the work, but finish something, learn from it, and move on. Every mistake and every misstep is another step forward. And you don't reach your potential by holding back. You reach it by showing up and being willing to be vulnerable. So I think Seth, for me anyway, he reminds us that when we share our imperfect work, we create these ripples. That's how he refers to it. And you might not even realise it, but what you put out there, this messy, unfinished human stuff, can inspire someone else, and it can lead them to somewhere they didn't know that they could go in the first place. And isn't that what running is all about? Showing people what's possible, even when it's not perfect. So I'll leave you with a story, actually a couple of stories. A few years ago, I ran a race where, from my point of view, everything went wrong, right? I missed a key turn, I did miles, I dropped places, and then I bonked really hard because I didn't fuel properly. I was too stressed about the making up the time and making up the distance and trying to catch people. And at first I was really devastated. I felt like I had let myself down. But looking back, obviously, a race like that teaches you much more than some of the races that were really on paper that looked like they had gone really perfectly. It taught me how to problem solve on the go. It taught me a lot about acceptance and even just accepting help from others, and how I can manage to keep going even when a plan falls apart. But here's the thing, this idea of embracing perfectionism isn't just about running. It's something I face every time I sit down to create a podcast like this, or when I work on videos for YouTube or social media. Honestly, I feel crippled by it sometimes. There's moments where I think I just don't have the expertise, I don't have the talent to express my ideas the way that I really want to in audio or in video, and I'll never be able to fully communicate my creative vision. I know that sounds grand, I don't mean it in a grand way, but I'll never be able to communicate this creative vision in video. And this feeling hit me really hard when I worked on a Tour de Géant video, which is on YouTube, and I spent way too long on it, far longer than I should have, because I kept second guessing myself all the time. I knew I didn't have all the shots ideally that I wanted, and I wasn't sure if I could actually string together the footage in a way that truly told the story that I wanted to tell. But I pushed myself through it. I made hard decisions. I was uncomfortable at times, and I had to let go of the idea of perfection and finally put it out. And here's what I learned, really. I learned that there's something magic about completing something, and seeing it through, and it generates some kind of energy for the next project that you go on to do, if you use that energy when it's present. And sure, I realised after the fact that I'd maybe missed some key shots that I could have taken, but I also learned how to piece together 100 fragments of kind of loosely connected footage into some kind of story. And if I hadn't forced myself to finish it, I'd have let my perfectionism win ultimately, and I wouldn't have learned anything, and I wouldn't have moved on. So I think for me, there's a lesson in there for all of us, whether we're talking about running, we're talking about creating, or just showing up for all the messy stuff that's going to be in your life. The magic isn't in getting it perfect. The magic is in getting it done. And when you do, you're much better prepared for what comes next. And just as a side note, really, it's hard putting yourself or your work out there into the world, but sometimes you just got to take the chance, not for the response itself, not for the recognition or for anybody else at all, but just so that you can keep on moving forward. So if you're out there chasing perfection, let me remind you of this: the most rewarding moments in running and in life come not when everything goes right, but when you really navigate the moments that go wrong. Mistakes are not detours, they're actually the path. Thanks for listening, and as always, keep pushing beyond your potential. If you enjoyed the podcast, please do leave us a comment or share it on social media. And if you're watching on YouTube, please just give us a like or leave us a comment. I really appreciate it. It helps for me to feel like I've made some kind of connection with the work that I'm putting out there that I'm uncomfortable with sometimes. So it does help to know that people listen or share some of the same feelings that I do. So thanks for watching, thanks for listening, and I'll speak to you all soon. Cheers, bye.